All right, here we go. I want to make sure I get all the social media stuff out there right now. Just posting that on Twitter, but we are 20 seconds away or thereabouts from the Beat Joe Bartel Online Championship taking place. Again, thanks everyone for tuning in right now. If you've followed me from SiriusXM earlier today with Angel Fire Radio from 10 to noon Eastern, whether it was on Friday when I was with Mario Puig on the SiriusXM show as well too with RotoWire side of things. You found us on social media, the RotoWire Twitter page, whether it be the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube page. We got a good time here. I think I've watched now either 6 or 7 of my RotoWire colleagues do one of these online championships, and this will be my first of the year. We'll have one more later in a couple of weeks or so. Myself, my co-host on the Waiver podcast on Monday, Jake Latarski, will be doing an auction draft on the NFFC here, but today it is just the normal, and I'll say it normal that way, RotoWire Online Championship, $250,000 grand prize to first place. If you win your league, or if you get second in terms of points or record, you get elevated to that spot to be able to do that over a 3-week span, week 15 through 17. So that's always the goal. Obviously, for everyone else participating in this league, the goal is to ultimately finish above me in the record or point total, because then they get a free subscription to RotoWire as well, too. Part of the allure of doing this with some of the experts. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in here. Just diving into the first 3 picks or so of this. And I've made the case now a number of different times on different platforms that I would argue the first round is one of the safest in recent memory. I think there's probably more like 15 or 16 first round selections. And it's never been that way in my career past, talking about different fantasy options. There's been times where it's a teardrop, and I think there obviously is, probably after pick 6 is a bit of a teardrop, as we'll see here. Coming up with Bijan Robinson going off the board. That's typically how it goes. And while I might not take Saquon Barkley over Jefferson or Lamb, or I might take Bijan over all of them, more or less the idea is picks 1 through 12, I think, are relatively safe. Now, I'm going to have a bit of a conundrum coming up here at pick number 9. You can go ahead and see that on the draft board itself, visually, or that my team is number 9. And I've talked about this on past platforms. And again, I talked about this on Angel Fire Radio earlier today on SiriusXM channel 87. I'm pretty torn with Ashton Genty and something else. And the idea is I like Ashton Genty to a certain extent, but if I take a running back here, I more or less have to push receiver in my second and third round selection. And obviously people that might be in this draft now can hear the strategy part of things. I don't really care. It really is trying to grapple with what I think is the best player, possibly safest player among that group of Malik Neighbors, St. Brown, Brian Thomas, Puka Nacua. You could throw in a lot of these receivers. The safest of my opinion really is Ashton Genty. And then it's otherwise a guy like Christian McCaffrey who just went, or Malik Neighbors who just went. And I actually like Amon-Ra St. Brown as well, too, of the Lions, and I've seen him in a few best balls in particular circle back to that second-round selection, either due to injury concerns, the Ben Johnson leaving aspect of things, or maybe just people are concerned about where the Lions' offense is going to be here, theoretically not having to push things with the injury stuff. So I'll go with Ashton Genty, who I felt like was going to be the selection if everything was status quo, more or less. And I'm going to kind of just pray that the second round, and more importantly, the third round, ends up looking like what I want. This is third round reversal for the NFFC as well, too, which was part of the factor. And for the first time, I think in 4 years, I ended up getting a selection that I actually wanted. Pick number 9. I had initially, you could set your KDS, so Kentucky Derby style. You could set your pick preference, and I did have 4 and 5 listed ahead of 9, but it went 4, 5, and then 9, 8, and something like that. And to get pick 9 here, I think it's a good spot because of that third round reversal. Again, I've watched a bunch of my colleagues participate in the RotoWire Online Championship. You can too on the RotoWire YouTube as well, whether it be Alan Slazowski doing a couple of them, Jim Coventry, Jeff Erickson, Mario Puig. They've all had theirs so far, and I think a few more to come. Almost everyone picked the number 1 pick, which I think is always a little bit surprising. Obviously, I know for a few of them it wasn't intentional. It's just how things sort of played out. But I will be very curious if what happens at pick 9 for me is what was reflected, I thought, favorably in other past drafts that I watched too. And again, this being early August now, I imagine there's going to be a lot of circumstances where things will change if you're doing these drafts later. So there goes one of my selections, one of the guys I was hoping that would fall to me in Drake London. You still have St. Brown left on the board from an ADP perspective. That's the top guy. Puka Nacua, Nico Collins. I think if I can get one of those receivers, and I should be left with them looking at that, That's sort of the goal here. I want to avoid the A.J. Brown group and Brock Bowers group if I could at pick 9. And the risk was at 8, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have one of those come back. You have to make a really tough choice. In my mind, whether I get St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins does not matter to me. It's one of those 3. So that's what it's looking like is going to happen. And there you go. I talked about St. Brown as a guy I was considering with a first-round selection. He ends up wrapping back to me. This is a full-point PPR format, so kind of feels like a no-brainer, much in the same way I think Genty in my first-round selection at 9 ended up being 2. So I'll lock this one in. We'll go ahead and take St. Brown, and we'll kind of move on throughout the draft process. So first 2 rounds of the books, again, third-round reversal, so we'll probably have to make a decision coming back. But first 4 receivers in the second round, Drake London, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, and then St. Brown, who I ended up selecting. Derrick Henry snuck into the back end of the first round, which isn't necessarily uncommon, but one of those that I'm getting more and more fine with if I was picking at 12 or 11. And the idea is that I'll get one of those receivers that I like coming back. And if it is truly, well, everyone's kind of close, then I'll go ahead and make the push on a Derrick Henry, who I would take over Devon Achane, but I have reservations about what Achane can be this year in fantasy. I did last year as well, too, and that certainly didn't play out correctly, or at least I was expecting Devon Achane to get injured or not be used in a certain capacity, and that was wrong. Now, Tyreek Hill has already indicated, hey, like if you want your short yardage offense to look better, don't have Devon Achane on the field. Very curious to see if Mike McDaniel picks up on that, if Achane does have workload loss, but I would assume, given where you're drafting him right now, back into the first round, early second, there's going to be a volume part of things that still maintains, even if he loses a bit of that production. So Charlene in the chat asked, and I think this is actually a really good question for later in the draft, your thoughts on Keenan Allen visiting the Chargers last Friday. I had thought this was going to be a possibility if Keenan Allen and his camp were willing to put bygones be bygones. Like I understand that the release and really what Keenan Allen did for the franchise prior, that was all a different GM regime than what is in Los Angeles right now. But there can still be some ill will to that. Maybe you weren't really exactly happy about how the whole circumstance went off, ultimately being released as a cap casualty. And while I think that ended up helping Keenan Allen almost extend his career, there's the opportunity. I think Allen could have been maybe in the Hall of Fame conversation if he had played out maybe 2 or 3 more years differently in these past couple of seasons. Obviously, that's not going to occur now, in my opinion. But going back to the Chargers, which I think is a good situation for both parties, is really, really interesting fantasy-wise. Allen is not nearly the receiver that he used to be, obviously, and I think Ladd McConkey does a lot of what Allen did before at his Charger stint. But having a second reliable player, if nothing else, to spell Ladd McConkey, and that we know Herbert has a connection with Keenan Allen, that really matters a lot. So I think Allen's going to be one of those guys gets underdrafted, especially in best ball formats where he's sort of buried in the ADP. I don't think it's going to end up happening here in the online championship. Everyone here drafting is just super sharp. But I do think the Keenan Allen Los Angeles Chargers marriage, I hope, returns or at least comes back, because that will be really interesting fantasy-wise. Discussing what's happened thus far in the second round, we have Brock Bowers go, which was great. That was after the Ladd McConkey part of things. A.J. Brown falls a little bit further ADP-wise. I didn't really want to take Brock Bowers. I understand why people do want to. And then getting Garrett Wilson as one of the first receivers in this next tier is really fascinating to me. Now, we'll see what ends up coming back in the third round reversal, Chase Brown being the first among those running backs. The reason I didn't want to take, or why I was considering not taking Ashton Genty with my number 9 selection, was exactly what might could occur here, where I like a lot of these running backs. There'll be Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs. With only 5 picks to go, all 3 are on the board. And there is a realm in which you'd say, okay, well, all these receivers in this next tier go off the board. You might have to take the leap and go 2 running backs in your first 3 picks, which is not ideal. It's not often how I like to build rosters, but there might be an ability, might be an opportunity, if I get lucky, to be able to chase some of the receivers later in the draft I like a lot. So we'll kind of see how this unfolds with 5 picks yet to go for my selection. Jackson Smith-Njigba goes into the second round. I have a tough time with this tier. And I guess tier is incorrect. I have a tough time with the back end of this draft range, in large part because I don't really want to take a Jackson Smith-Njigba or a Ladd McConkey or Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a little bit different because I think they're more or less capped to where they are. So yeah, I appreciate that, Nick. Yeah, you're right. Bucky is off the board, but that's typically that running back range that ends up going that I back into the second round that I always get a little bit nervous about. But good call, Nick. Yep, Bucky Irving off the board. That's what happens when I keep talking about the Chargers I miss one of the guys I like from a full point PPR perspective. So first quarterback off the board with Lamar Jackson, my pick up here in 3. Again, ADP wise, at least going down the table, it's Josh Jacobs, it's Josh Allen, Trey McBride, T. Higgins, and a few of those other receivers that I mentioned going a little bit further. I'll be really curious, and I always look at the other picks perspective. There goes Trey McBride, yeah, and then Jacobs. So this will be a little bit of a tougher selection, I think, with what I want to do. Let's just go over it a little bit. Tyreek Hill is I think somebody that typically people would go for given the high upside potential for what he could do if things all work out. T. Higgins obviously would be one of those selections if you have a Bengal stack going. I'm less interested in T. Higgins, I think, overall. A lot of people are in on Breece Hall as well, too. Obviously, the Josh Allen aspect. I won't go early quarterback. And then Kyron Williams is another option as well, too. This just might end up being what I do in most of these drafts, and I'm not exactly thrilled for it for a variety of reasons, quite frankly. But if the same premise of Christian McCaffrey becomes Christian McCaffrey of old, we could also then apply that to Tyreek Hill, right? Like if Tyreek Hill ends up being healthy and to what degree he loses his speed at his age, I don't know. He's still going to be one of the fastest players in the NFL. If everything works out that way and if Tua stays healthy, Tyreek Hill is absolutely top 3 or top 4 fantasy receiver. And yet we're talking about a 30 ADP difference from the same concept that we kind of apply to Christian McCaffrey. I guess probably more like 25. I don't really like taking Tyreek Hill necessarily, but if I'm saying who has the upside potential in this range, again, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Marvin Harrison, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Adams, you can admit there's a downside, and I think there's a substantial one, but also acknowledge that Tyreek Hill could really do some great things if he's back and healthy. And it sounded like everything from last year was lower body stuff, which is never good for an older receiver, but one of those things, again, Tyreek Hill ends up being my selection. I have a few in redraft leagues. I have a few shares of Tyreek Hill, not many in best ball, which will be really interesting because you'd ideally, I think, want him more in best ball than in redraft. But for a third round selection, I'm okay with that. I think I would have preferred Josh Jacobs if this was the way the board was going to break. Of course, goes one pick before me. And that team, again, with Devon Achane and then Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, we're going to compile stats with St. Brown and Tyreek Hill. Hopefully, Genty as well. One of these 3 guys has the boom potential, but we might be drafting a bit more of the explosive players later on, hoping we kind of catch something. Lightning in the bottle is not the right word, but catch one of these to see if I can expand my team to win a tournament, not necessarily just go ahead and beat the overall in the league. So Amari Hampton ends up going off the board here in the 3rd round. I have seen him in multiple of my colleagues' online championship go as an early 3rd round selection, and I never really had considered him. He's a little bit buried, at least on the NFFC queue as well. I didn't want to go running back outside of Josh Jacobs, so that was fine. But I do admit, like, there is a little bit. How many times do you get a chance to take Amari Hampton? I think by the end of August, this will be more comfortably where his ADP is, if not a little bit earlier into the 3rd round as well, too. So long as this superficial eye injury thing continues to happen for Najee Harris, I really do think we're going to see circumstances that will push Amari Hampton up even further. So this might be a value for Team 4 that they won't be able to see or others won't be able to see for another 2 weeks. Or I'm sorry, we'll see. That'll be gone in 2 weeks as we get more information or continue to get lack thereof from the Chargers. Speaking of lack thereof information, Terry McLaurin also goes up the board. I thought maybe he might fall a bit further with the contract stuff. Friends of the Angel Fire radio show, SiriusXM, I do the podcast. Everyone knows that I don't care about this at all. It would be complete Stephen A. Smith asinine to think the Commanders botched this so significantly that they do, in fact, have to trade Terry McLaurin. I understand he requested a trade. I get what that looks like. I understand that from an agent perspective and player perspective. There are only so many avenues to get what you want that you have, so you can press this button at a certain point. The Commanders or the Washington franchise hasn't made the conference finals since 1981. They had only won 1 playoff game during the RG3 era. They'd only made the playoffs once since 2015. To piss that all away because you don't want to pay Terry McLaurin $32 million instead want to pay him $28 would be the most ridiculous Washington football thing that I've ever heard of. When you're trying to build off of Jaden Daniels, you have this new ownership group. That would have been something I would have assumed would occur in the past ownership regime. This shouldn't happen now. Like this, with everything that they're going off of, whatever the Commanders are building on, It it would be truly stunning to me in the most Washington football way if they end up not getting McLaurin signed. So I think he is going to, and if that's the case, getting late third round value when he was typically being drafted at early third round, or at least in that range of JSN and Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson. I think that's a good spot to be. So that team number 2 right now with Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, Terry McLaurin, now Kenneth Walker. Really interested to see if they end up partnering with Zach Charbonnet. Will be one of those teams I'm definitely watching as we progress through this draft. So Charlene asked another question. This was one of the injuries that happened earlier today. Khalil Shakir having a high ankle sprain or strain. I would assume it's a sprain. I saw sprain, but strain could be correct. But it got changed around or whatever. Typically, like a round 7 or 8 guy, I would imagine, had this injury not occurred today, he would probably be more like late 6, early 7 in the NFFC. Often these full point PPR guys get pushed up a little bit more. You'll see Jacoby Myers probably go in the same spot. I would theoretically, if I wasn't drafting in a high stakes league like I am today, want more information. If we get sort of the Justin Jefferson hand waving that Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings did, I'm less worried about what Khalil Shakir will look like for this offense. And more importantly, I think if he's healthy, he is the team's number 1 receiver. And whatever facet you want to describe that term as, like Keon Coleman might be the better touchdown catcher. Josh Allen will still run in touchdowns. James Cook theoretically will too. We can talk about him throughout the show as well. I think Khalil Shakir, when it's all said and done, gets the most targets, easily gets the most receiving yards. And in that regard, I would be happy to take him if it comes at a discount. But if it is, here he's going to be mixed in with everyone else, or Stephon Diggs or Khalil Shakir. If all things are equal, I would rather have the guy be healthy, which is going to be a question that we'll probably have to grapple with in the draft to come. When to take Khalil Shakir? What do we do from a fading perspective? So great question as well. Happy to kind of talk about some of the news that's occurred over the past week. Again, going on through the draft right now, I'll have my pick in just a little bit here, but we saw Rashee Rice go off the board as well too. I want to lock it and make sure that we at least get the one last right selection here. The reason I had went double receiver, St. Brown and Tyreek Hill, pick 2 and 3, was to afford myself the flexibility that if things didn't break the way I wanted to, if DK Metcalf did not fall to me, which was a very early 4th round selection, and kudos to that team, that I could then take the running back that I liked. And I really am fascinated with this section because you have James Cook, you have Alvin Kamara, you have Chuba Hubbard as well too. You could even throw in somebody like James Conner or Travion Henderson, who I think goes a little bit later. I don't assume a quarterback will come back to me. There are 2 on the ADP right now, and I understand James Cook had the sit out thing that happened a little bit. I don't know what to make of that, but I will just go ahead and say I think James Cook is going to be the best, even if he takes a little bit of a volume loss for this offense among this group. Like, you can have reservations about Kamara, you could certainly have them about Chuba Hubbard as well too. What degree do we think? Like, if the answer is get the guy in the best offense, that's James Cook over every one of these receivers. So I'm sorry, over every one of these other running backs, can Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard as well in that mix. I don't like to do it. I've actually had now a couple of redraft shares of Tyreek Hill and James Cook, and I don't want to be that guy that's taking them, especially if there is this contract stuff. At least in the Bills' perspective, you can safeguard yourself a little bit with Ray Davis, which hopefully I'll be able to do later in the draft. And I think there is a way to protect yourself getting some volume at running back later. But again, going Tyreek Hill at the back end of the third round reverse, I should say, and not taking Amari Hampton or not taking Kyron Williams allows me to have this sort of build with James Cook as my running back 2, as opposed to having Xavier Worthy as my wide receiver 2, or George Pickens, for example, going there. I mean, I don't know what that looks like. I do know what it looks like, and I'm not like a huge fan of it overall, but we'll have to see. Again, with Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels on the board, Lamar Jackson, I would imagine that team's not taking the quarterback. But what happens with team 11 and 10, I'll be very curious. I don't necessarily want to take Jaden Daniels either, but if we do end up getting this sort of volume and this ability to, if we do get this opportunity to do it, might as well just lean into a team that I don't normally get, which would be a lot of high octane potential for this. So I think, if Jaden Daniels is there with 2 picks to go, that's probably my selection that I'll end up looking at. So we'll kind of wait this out here, and then I'll kind of go in more of the questions and the builds at the moment. By just looking over things, it's not there's Joe Burrow at pick number 11. Again, more importantly, 6 points per passing touchdown, which is why you'll see a Joe Burrow go over Jaden Daniels. I think you'll see Burrow often go over Jalen Hurts too, because typically the team 1 will take Burrow and partner him with Chase. In this case, team 1 took Josh Allen, and then Metcalf. I love that team 1 build right now. But we'll go ahead and do this again, taking Jaden Daniels as the last of this quarterback tier. Hope he stays healthy. Hope he throws a lot of touchdowns. I don't think he ends up getting a Lamar Jackson level of production, and in a 6 points per passing touchdown format, a little bit less. I mean that he should probably be quarterback 5 in this scenario in 6 points per passing touchdown as opposed to Joe Burrow. But I like the opportunity to have some of these, like the best upside scenario occur with these teams. I think Jaden Daniels, and more importantly, I can couple that with some quarterbacks that I like later to protect myself in the event that he does get injured. I recognize that's not how some people would build teams. Like that's not technically the goal. If you draft one of these quarterbacks high, you should be going high. You should be drafting these quarterbacks high and then not taking anybody else. But we'll have to see as it goes. There goes Alvin Kamara, the pick afterwards. The George Kittle part of things too. A lot of people in on George Kittle, and rightfully so. So team number 8 also building an interesting sort of roster. Travion Henderson is the running back 2 for team 7. Ideally, I didn't want to be in that scenario where I was having to consider a Travion Henderson at this ADP range to beat, even though in full point PPR, I completely get it. So let's get to another question in the chat. And Charlene asks, when would you take Christian McCaffrey? And I've had this conversation on Angel Fire Radio early today, again, 10 to noon on Sundays, at least before the NFL season starts. You can listen to that also on the replay part of things on SiriusXM, the radio channel as well. I don't want to take McCaffrey early, and I was happy that was kind of taken for me at pick 7. I wouldn't have to sort of decide between Genty and Christian McCaffrey, because I recognize the upside scenario. That if McCaffrey's healthy, Niners have a laughably easy schedule this year. Even if McCaffrey isn't used as much, Niners don't need to because they're winning so many games because they're comically easy schedule. It won't matter because in that scenario, McCaffrey, I think to get them to be in a blowout spot is producing insane. I just despise having to be in a fantasy situation where I'm trusting people, and in this case, the head coach or the general manager, the front office, the organization, and so Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, trusting people to tell me the truth when they have deliberately shown that they don't want to. And not that they couldn't, which I think people will try to hand wave away from McCaffrey last year, but chose not to. There absolutely was a way to communicate to us, the betting public, the fantasy public, whatever else, that McCaffrey probably was not going to be healthy for week 1, and that could have been communicated way earlier. But it felt like John Lynch and it felt like Kyle Shanahan were deliberately withholding information for what? An advantage over the Jets? Because that's really all it was. Like maybe you get a 2-quarter advantage over your week 1 opponent, but you're telling me an NFL team in week 2 can't adjust to Jordan Mason getting 20 carries? That planning for this Christian McCaffrey part of things is so tough that they can't account for what Jordan Mason did in the offense week 1. I find that BS. I find that completely BS. So in my mind, I recognize that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, their job is to win football games, put their team in the best spot to win the Super Bowl. But you can still be a bit more honest about the scenario with Christian McCaffrey. So no, if I have everything more or less equal in the first round, I don't want to take Christian McCaffrey when I have to trust in individuals who don't care about what we think in the industry or otherwise. And if I like an Ashton Genty in the same spot, I think Genty can get 85% of the volume production and therefore is a serviceable first-round selection, I'll do it. Because at least I haven't been burned, whatever you want to call it, by the 49ers. So I think to answer the question, I'm taking McCaffrey more like pick 13, 14. I would take McCaffrey probably over Nico Collins. I would still take St. Brown over McCaffrey. I'd take McCaffrey over Lab McConkey. And that's just not happening anymore because people are going to understand and recognize what happens in the scenario that McCaffrey does become the offensive player of the year from 2 years ago, or initially when he came over the 49ers. I understand how that works. I just don't want to put myself in a spot where I have to believe or trust in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. This is the worst spot to be in, I think, in the year 2025 at least. So among my first-round selections. A bit of these older running backs going off the board. So James Conner becomes, I think it's early 6th-round selection. Aaron Jones as well, too. Team 2 has now 3 running backs. Kenneth Walker being injured the past 2 practices, was injured coming into training camp as well, too, has been injured almost all of his career. Yeah, I would draft another running back, too. I get why you wouldn't want to have Kenneth Walker necessarily be that spot. Now, that being said, this offense, this scheme in particular, seems like it could be well suited for Kenneth Walker. And I did a study among the mid-round running backs, really running backs drafted round 4 through 7. And there were multiple instances of year 4 backs, both Josh Jacobs and I think it was David Montgomery or somebody else. I'll have to go back and look at the article that had their breakout year in year 4. Of course, Josh Jacobs a couple years ago led the league in rushing yards. I don't know if there's anything that correlates with that other than it's interesting that it happened twice. And Kenneth Walker again entering his 4th year. I'm not really going after Kenneth Walker, but I understand the premise behind it, especially if I get Zach Charbonnet. All bets are off then. Like you're always safe with that stuff too. So Roma Dunze becomes another receiver off the board here, early 6th round. 4 receivers for Team 3 as well too. Let's get to another question, and this one's interesting here from iStream Madden. Thoughts on the track record Ben Johnson has with slot receivers, and will that increase Burden's production and projection? So I think I already am quibbling with the idea that it's going to be Burden that automatically is the slot receiver. I understand why Ryan Poles, the GM for the Bears, drafted Luther Burden in the 2nd round. And I think there's an opportunity as an heir apparent to go ahead and do that at some point. But you don't have Colston Loveland in the 1st round, still have Cole Kmet on your roster, and then have DJ Moore as one of the higher paid receivers in the NFL, and Adunze as a top 10 pick last year, and say, oh, well, I have to make way for my 2nd round pick. Like all the draft pick bros, and this is not, I don't think that's what the question is related to, but all those people are going to be like, well, draft capital matters. So then why isn't draft capital mattering for Colston Loveland or Roma Dunze, who should have proven that he could do something in the NFL last year, or at least had the opportunity to prove it to with the tape from the coaching staff's perspective? In my mind, DJ Moore is the slot receiver for this team, and I have not been convinced otherwise with some of the stuff we've heard from practice as well too. Okay, I was hoping that would not happen, but we had Chris Olave just get sniped 1 pick before me. I also like Stephon Diggs in this range. So we'll come back to this question in just a bit, but now looking at receiver, this is going to be a different conversation. I thought I had it smooth sailing with what I could go ahead and do, but now becomes a different task as well, because you look at the receivers in this range. Chris Godwin injured, Jordan Addison, Travis Hunter not going down that direction, Juwan Jennings injured, Deebo Samuel injured, Khalil Shakir injured. It's a bleak spot to be. It's not great, and I don't necessarily like taking Jordan Addison with the concept that Addison is going to be like this can't miss guy. In the event though that you're going to see Justin Jefferson limited to some capacity, I'm fine with Jordan Addison being in this spot. So I'll take Jordan Addison as my wide receiver 3. A lot of interesting running backs still on the board, whether it be Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, RJ Harvey. I had a conversation with Jim Coventry on the XM show today talking about Juwan Jennings too. And I think if Juwan Jennings had not re-injured his his hamstring, that would have been my selection over Jordan Addison, very popular guy right afterwards, Emeka Ibuka as well too, that just went there. I would have been fine with that concept with Juwan Jennings there. And I still might. I would have loved RJ Harvey if he came back to me in a full point PPR setting. I think that's a great spot to be in too. Of course, that didn't end up working out, but you can certainly make a case that even in the event Juwan Jennings is limited to some capacity, he's going to be the most consistent or reliable receiver of that group. Now, we'll have to see. Honestly, I think if Ricky Pearsall is there, I'm going to take Ricky Pearsall over a lot of these other injured receivers right now, and just hoping that I can kind of compile enough early opportunity receivers that I'm protecting myself. I liked Pearsall as a prospect coming out last year. I understood that he was more or less kept in check, and again, that goes off the board right there. So less of a conversation point now. But I do find some value in saying Ricky Pearsall can be the number 1 guy more than I did even a couple weeks ago. Like I was all in on Brandon Ayuk, and then it was revealed that he had like that double surgery or whatever you want to call it. And now with this injury stuff with Juwan Jennings as well too, it makes it really difficult other than saying, here's Christian McCaffrey, here's George Kittle. Those guys will go ahead and operate really effectively. So looking at the other receivers on the board, it's a difficult spot to be in because I don't like Deebo Samuel necessarily. If you want to have a 4th receiver before your 3rd running back, which I think is probably the right strategy, although I know running back run typically happens around this point, it really is a little bit bleaker. I think, I guess I'll go. I'm stuck at this with 20 seconds left to go. I'm stuck with a couple of these guys. I think the option for me is going to end up being another running back, and we'll go ahead and commit to this process of Caleb Johnson. I had clicked back and forth. I'm sure it won't matter here. I had clicked back and forth, Caleb Johnson or Isaiah Pacheco. I think Isaiah Pacheco is one of the better values out there in drafts right now. I think from a full point PPR perspective, and there you go, right, pick it right afterwards. That's a really, really good player to assume, and I like that team a lot at Team A tier with Olave getting my guy. Pacheco's the running back too. There was really only one of these tier of running backs that I thought would be a capable running back too, and that was Caleb Johnson and Isaiah Pacheco in round 7. Dave Montgomery, I guess, is fine too. Like typically, he doesn't fall to this point, but I would much rather have that group over the Aaron Jones, over Joe Mixon, who still has not been drafted yet as well too, and the other running backs in this range: Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy. I like Travis Etienne, but we get it real bleak. Jalen Moore, Najee Harris, Jordan Mason. So to get one of these guys, one of these last 3: Montgomery, Caleb Johnson, Isaiah Pacheco, that is, I feel like, is going to be the right call. But I'm gonna get upset at myself if Caleb Johnson is the wrong back of the two between Isaiah Pacheco and Caleb Johnson. If Caleb Johnson just fits the Najee Harris role 1-to-1, it's still a value in the seventh round. As in to say, here's Caleb Johnson who gets 210 carries, gets close to 1,000 receiving yards. Obviously, Jalen Warren's more of the pass catcher, but Caleb Johnson can do a little bit of that. If that's all Caleb Johnson does, he's still worth the 7th round selection, because Najee Harris was like a 9th round guy last year, ended up playing above that. I would assume Caleb Johnson can maybe score a few more points. He's a little bit more explosive than Najee Harris. If Caleb Johnson is more than that, and again, I don't know, but if Caleb Johnson is more than what I think people would often define Najee Harris as, just a meh running back, then we're talking about something that we're taking around 4 or 5 next year, if not a little bit higher, especially if Jalen Warren isn't around or the Steelers change something offensively and maybe they get a better quarterback situation than Aaron Rodgers. So I think getting one of these last of that tier of running backs matters a lot to me. Now we'll have to see. I am forfeiting a bit of receiver depth, which is already a question mark when you have guys like St. Brown and Tyreek Hill, who are both injured or often injury prone, and then that's kind of what I'm relying on. So we'll be going heavy at receiver later on throughout the draft, but that will be a decision that I think I'm comfortable with as we keep moving forward, at least the way I'm kind of seeing things right now. And again, with this receiver tier, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp just went off the board, Matthew Golden on there, Chris Godwin. There's question marks about these as well too. So going back to the earlier question about the slot receiver in the Ben Johnson offense, I still think it could be DJ Moore. And even if it ends up being Luther Burden, my question to everyone else who asks this, whether it be iStream Madden or otherwise, how often are the Bears going to be in 3 receiver personnel? Theoretically, this is a run-first offense, just like it was with the Lions last year before everyone on the defense got hurt. Like, how many times did we have to talk about Brock Wright in deeper fantasy leagues because the Lions have played 2 tight end sets so often to get touchdowns? Like, theoretically, this is the best case version of that for Ben Johnson, with Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet doing the Sam Laporta and Brock Wright. And if it is DJ Moore that takes the slot work and that you have Luther Burden pushed out to the outside, which he can do, I don't know if all that effectively, but more like a bubble screening sort of guy, there's just no scenario where I'm taking Luther Burden as current ADP. And I would not be surprised if he goes off the board here in the next round or so, next 12, 14 picks as is. So it's a great question. If you believe Luther Burden is going to be that slot guy, I have zero issue with it because I was the draft capital committed to that matters. But I would just say it's not a necessity when you have a guy like DJ Moore who can operate that same way. And also when you're playing 2 tight ends as often as I think the Lions are going to go ahead and choose to do. So great question. We'll have to see where the board ends up valuing Luther Burden, but I'm not going to be taking him. I guess it'd be the best bet. Team 1 snipes Team 2. Theoretically, you'd want Jordan Mason to protect your Aaron Jones spot. Of course, that team opted over Brian Robinson instead of Aaron Jones. But which one of these running backs for the Vikings ends up being the guy is going to be fascinating to kind of watch. If you believe the Vikings offense is good this year. I happen to think Kevin O'Connell is a top 3 coach in the entire NFL, or top 5, right around that range. It's probably Sean McVay, Andy Reid, in my mind, Kevin O'Connell in some order. That the Vikings traded one of their few draft picks to get Jordan Mason, then signed him to a pretty lucrative deal for at least a backup running back, tells me that they really wanted a better version of Cam Akers last year, which makes sense. Everyone wants a better version of whatever Cam Akers has been doing the past couple seasons. Assuming that Jordan Mason can replicate the between the tackle carries, and you have Aaron Jones do less things but more important snaps or carries or pass opportunities, whatever it is, that's the best function, I think, for everyone involved. But if McCarthy can't operate the offense to the degree that Sam Darnold did last year, it won't matter. Like the concept of Jordan Mason protecting Aaron Jones and allowing both those guys to flourish, it won't matter if JJ McCarthy can't be the quarterback that was anywhere close to Sam Darnold. Now, I think in defense of JJ McCarthy, who I did not like coming out of college, nobody liked Sam Darnold either last year. And then Kevin O'Connell made him like a top 5 MVP favorite up until week 17, and when the Rams obliterated them afterwards. So like, I just think Kevin O'Connell can make do, and that's partially why I took Jordan Addison at wide receiver 3. That even in the worst case scenario, I think for McCarthy, not a great quarterback, it's going to be the TJ Hawkinson, it's going to be the Justin Jefferson, and I think it's going to be Jordan Addison as well too. So we'll kind of have to see. A bunch of tight ends going off the board here. Again, Brock Bowers going mid-second round, and then typically Trey McBride's around this spot as one of the first third-round selections. Then George Kittle at tight end 3, Laporte at tight end 4. Kelsey at tight end 5 is surprising, but not entirely too surprising, given what he can do from a full point PPR perspective. Evan Ingram I like a lot, but not normally tight end 6. And then Mark Andrews as well too, which is really fascinating to sort of see the tight end hierarchy go ahead and looking right now. We'll have to kind of watch as the rest of this draft sort of unfolds. I would assume that you'll see at least 2 other tight ends in the next round or so, but this is normally where it ends up going off. Like this tier of tight ends is Evan Ingram and Andrews, and I think conventionally you'll see other guys around the same spot as well too. But 2 picks yet to go for me at number 9. Again, 3 running backs right now. I think that Caleb Johnson was the last of that running back tier I liked. The receivers coming back, missing a few of them. There's still a few that I like. And then a bunch of quarterbacks. If you're going off the ADP right now, I'm looking at the top of the board. It's Bo Nix, it's Jared Goff, it's Kyler Murray, it's Caleb Williams, all like top 4 or 5 projected picks. Now, people aren't going to do that, and you'll see Jaden Reed was one of the receivers left. I wouldn't have minded if he fell to my spot, but it's a good spot to be if you're kind of looking at quarterbacks in this range. I don't know how to differentiate between the Bo Nix and Fields and Kyler Murray's and Goff's the world. Like, there's probably a personal preference in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues like the NFFC. That would be different than what you're going to see here today. I'm sorry, in your friends and family leagues that you might be doing with 4 points per passing touchdown. Like, that's maybe where a Kyler or Justin Fields gets pushed up from the rushing aspect. But with 20 picks here to go, I'm very curious to sort of see what will end up happening with this last selection. I have a queue set. Okay, we have Bo Nix go off the board. So there you go. There was another quarterback, and I'll just go ahead and make the selection now. I'm a little surprised that he made it to my pick, but if we're talking about full point PPR, TJ Hawkinson, I think gets a lot of work, and maybe I'm going to have to commit to a JJ McCarthy later in this draft because now I have 2 Vikings on my team. And again, if Kevin O'Connell is not the genius that I think he is, this could go really bad. But Hawkinson post Lions to Vikings trade, and then really immediately once he was activated off of injured reserve last year, the PUP list, whatever it was, has always been a tight end 5 or 6. And I'm getting him as tight end 8 right now. Now everyone's more or less equal in value. I think value ties is equal enough. But in a full point PPR league like the NFFC, I would take Hawkinson over Mark Andrews. I think Hawkinson over Hawkinson over Evan Ingram is one I wouldn't consider. And I have personally been taking Hawkinson over Kelsey, although I recognize that probably isn't a great idea given Kelsey's almost always a guaranteed 85 receptions or whatever it might be. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of those that we'll kind of have to monitor, like the tight end situation. But I'm very happy that Hawkinson ended up falling to me. And looking at what's left on the board over the next 3 picks, kind of interested to see what'll end up occurring. But I like some of these selections as well too. Marvin Mims, I'm pretty sure I'm seeing Marvin Mims. Yeah, that might be one of his highest ADP selections. I'm not entirely positive, but that's one of those that you typically don't see go there. I don't know if I wouldn't make the pick. I guess I'll say it that way. But I like that team overall. Again, the Lamar Jackson call, Chuba Hubbard is one of my favorite running back twos. And if you have one of Jameson Williams or Travis Hunter hit, I think you're in a good spot. You just need one of them to do so. Drake London being my favorite of those second tier, third tier of receivers. I wouldn't take London over Blake Neighbors necessarily because I don't want people pointing at me and laughing, but I actually would be totally fine if that is what somebody else chose to do. And going back to Charlene's question, looking at the receivers in this range, how are you supposed to value a guy like Khalil Shakir who is injured? I'll take Khalil Shakir over Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, certainly Brandon Ayuk. There's a few receivers a little bit later in the draft, but I think this is a guy that if you were to do this draft yesterday, is 2 rounds higher. And to our knowledge right now, we're assuming Khalil Shakir is going to be healthy for the start of the season. So I'm very, very comfortable, very ecstatic that we can get him to fall here in the 9th round. And that does make me get a bit more protection from the Jordan Addison side of things on that offense. We're building depth, and we didn't really sacrifice too much with the elite level quarterback play, getting Jaden Daniels where we did. Now, however, it's got to be that offense actually looks good for Minnesota, and you have to have Khalil Shakir actually be healthy. We are doing this literally 12 hours after the injury was announced. There's no guarantees as to what Khalil Shakir will actually be health-wise and if he'll be ready for week 1. We thought McCaffrey would be ready week 1. Kyle Shannon, John Lynch, you liars. So we'll have to see, but I think I'm very comfortable from the knowledge that if I've not missed anything, I think we'll just do a quick search. Khalil Shakir, week to week with the ankle injury. That's still, we've been hearing a high ankle sprain, which I know we have a few doctors in the chat, if we want to call it that. The high ankle sprains last longer, but we have a full month before the regular season even starts. So we got over 700 people watching live. Obviously, thank you for tuning in here on a Sunday night. Whether you came from my Sirius XM show on Angel Fire Radio early today or the Friday show where Mario Puig and I are talking about things, really appreciate you guys following along. If you're on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel, shout out to you guys as well, too. We got a lot more of these to come with the NFFC. It's been a partnership for as long as I can remember working at RotoWire, and I love those guys, Greg Ambrosius and company at the NFFC. So really pleased to be able to do this and have you guys follow along. Again, I'm Team 9 right now, a bunch of really high-quality teams. I would say successful, very successful NFFC teams in my draft. And if you don't know the dummy at the poker table, it might be you kind of thing. It's what it feels like looking at the people I'm drafting with, but I'm having a lot of fun thus far. So thanks to all 700 of you right now tuning in, watching. If you want to do this sort of thing with the NFFC, you could certainly sign up. It's a $350 entry for this competition. There are other lower stakes ones. There are best balls in the NFFC as well too. And if you really just want to watch people do drafts or do drafts yourself, go ahead and download the RotoWire Fantasy Football app right now on any of the app stores out there. RotoWire Fantasy Football. If you go ahead and you have this, I think the code for today is YouTube15. You get 15% off the RotoWire subscription. You can use that to go ahead and do the draft assistant tools, kind of have people analyzing your draft in real time as it's happening. I love using the mock draft tools where I can practice a lot of these strategies. I did literally sit and do about 4 or 5 mock drafts before I came on today with an idea of what would be available at the pick number 9. And what does it look like if I take Genty? What does it look like if I take Malik Neighbors, or if I end up taking a Brian Thomas, which would have been the receiver of choice at number 9, or St. Brown? Like, I went through all that in the RotoWire Fantasy Football app just using the mock draft tool. So YouTube 15 gets you 15% off that subscription to go ahead and check that out as well too. And we're going to be going through. I don't know if we're going to make it through the entire draft. I might stop around 17 or 18. I got to watch my guy John Cena hopefully knock off Cody Rhodes in a face-on-face battle. Not a heel John Cena anymore. We'll have to. I'm saying that in jest. If any of you are following wrestling right now, that was kind of teased, but it could be Cody that ends up turning heel. But that's going to happen here on SummerSlam, happening right now on NBC. If you're going to watch SummerSlam, just watch me on the side at least, so I can keep the viewer count going and get the numbers pumped. RotoWire can love what I'm doing here, but it's been a blast so far, and happy with the way my draft has tuned in, at least is looking right now. We'll get to another question from Charlene because she's been firing them away. They've been awesome. Would you draft Jennings or Pearsall? And we had this conversation earlier with those 2 Niner receivers, but the idea of I would draft both. I wasn't drafting Ricky Pearsall before. Now with the news on Juwan Jennings, I probably will be drafting him, Ricky Pearsall. But I'm not fading Juwan Jennings. He ended up going, and I'll hide the comment momentarily here, back into the first round, 7th, 8th round turn. I would have been pretty happy if I was team 1, having a Metcalf, Waddle, and then getting Juwan Jennings as my wide receiver 4. That's a really good spot to be, I think. And while I'm not a huge fan of the running backs, at least James Conner and Jordan Mason for what they are, that's the type of build that you can absolutely go ahead and take advantage of that. Well, there goes my guy, Ray Davis. Would have loved to have him come back with the James Cook selection, especially if James Cook does end up having the business holdout that we're hearing some comments for. But again, back to that Juwan Jennings, like that's a really good spot to be in. And if I take him over the other group of injured receivers, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, Chris Godwin, maybe even. Like I'm really, really in a good spot with that. At this point, with the information we know now and how it seems like Juwan Jennings either re-injured or aggravated the injury is probably the better terminology that he might have had earlier, then Ricky Pearsall by default is the correct answer. So we're seeing a bunch of running backs go off the board. Travis Etienne was one of the running backs I would have considered if I had not taken Caleb Johnson a little bit earlier, but 2, 3, 4, 6 running backs over the past 12 or 10 picks. This is what happens in these drafts. There's a tier now where we're going to run into the running back position that is going to just get gobbled up. And that's totally fine, especially in the NFFC. That happens quite often. But what level and what degree that you think these guys are really going to pan out is the part that we'll get to. And I'm saying it because I do have a bit of strategy in mind with this. I don't want to give away necessarily who I'll be looking at. There are a few that are left at the board that I'll be taking over any of these guys, but we'll get there. So I'm on the clock first, and if I play this right, I think I might be able to get both of the players I want. And Keon Coleman would have been one of those receivers. I think he went a little bit earlier as I was babbling on. Way earlier now at this point. So of the receivers, it's maybe guys that I'm not interested in. We'll get to maybe one on my next pick. But I think the way, oh boy, now I'm in a conundrum because we can play this a certain way and be safe, or we can go a different direction and not. Debating between those two quite heavily now. We'll do it. I'll go with the receiver that I want first. I think I'd be upset if I didn't end up getting Christian Kirk on the way back. I believe I took him. Okay, I was going to say, is it appearing on the board? I might have missed the selection. Dak Prescott, Jake Ferguson combo. I like that one too with the Cowboys. But Christian Kirk might get injured. He probably will get injured. He gets injured all the time. But if he ends up playing and ends up being healthy, and this Texans offense passes to the degree I think they're going to end up passing, this is a really, really good spot to be in. That's an 85 catch guy in a full point PPR league for close to 1,000 receiving yards. That's not what's happening for Marvin Mims. That's not happening with Luther Burden. I don't know if Michael Pittman can have that sustained in that offense. I feel very confident. Now, the only issue is, of course, if Christian Kirk can stay healthy. He doesn't normally. Fair play. But you can get that safety net a little bit later by drafting one of the Jalen's. I think it's Jalen Noel. I always get Jalen Noel and Jalen Royal confused, the Chiefs receiver. But you can protect that slot receiver asset, because I think Jaden Higgins plays on the outside. He probably is a boundary starting receiver. But more importantly, it's if Nico Collins get injured, that's when Jaden Higgins does well. Jaden Higgins does not get into Christian Kirk's way. And I think if the Texans offense operates anything like rookie year CJ Stroud, Christian Kirk is going to be in a really, really good spot. One of those guys that I'm happy to get as my wide receiver 5. Rashad Bateman would have been another one. I liked Rashad Bateman a decent amount that I was considering as well too. And we're seeing these run on tight ends now with Jake Ferguson and Tucker Kraft now. And at this point, I think you have to go back to the running back well. And I'll make the call of this group. Unless he ended up going. Oh yeah, okay. I would have taken Trey Benson with my selection here, so that ended up being a good call. And I wonder if Christian Kirk would not have went, but Trey Benson was the right one. So now at this point is the time where I'll typically dip my toe into it and just go into the Quinshon Judkins part of things. I understand the legal part of things. Judkins may never play again. It's a round 11 selection. Obviously, what he did is horrible. I also think the Browns are kind of safeguarding themselves, that you can go ahead and assume that he will play at least a little bit this season, right? We've heard some semi-positive comments about that hopefully he will. He hasn't signed his contract yet. Again, a round 11 pick. If this doesn't end up hitting, right? If Judkins doesn't end up playing, I should say, running backs in this range, Najee Harris, Cam Skattebo, Ramondre Stevenson, Isaac Guerrero, none of them have the opportunity, I think, to have a massive fantasy difference-making season. Judkins does, if and when he ends up playing. And if he doesn't, it's an easy cut. So at this range, I get much more risk-tolerant as opposed to the Chris McCaffreys early on, the injury stuff. And Ramondre Stevenson probably is the conventionally right selection. I know a lot of my colleagues will be upset that I don't go that Ramondre Stevenson route. I think Stevenson plays plenty for the Patriots, but I do think his value is capped with what Trayvon Henderson does for them. So I'll take Judkins over Stevenson right now. If it is more confirmed that Judkins just won't play at all this year, obviously that's going to be a bad call, a wasted round 11 pick. But at the moment, I feel pretty good saying that's a running back 4, and I can get some volume at running back a little bit later on, which is typically what I choose to do. So, again, I would have loved Trey Benson. He ended up going right one pick before, so that would have been or 2 picks before. That would have been the preferred selection or preferred choice. But Rashad Bateman as well too. If I would have went Trey Benson and then Christian Kirk, does that come back? I don't know. 2 receivers were drafted there. Maybe Christian Kirk goes instead of Luther Burden, for example. We'll never really know. And I know Isaac Guerrero, I think, was the protection for Christian McCaffrey, the backup for that too. So good spot on that one. I didn't want to go ahead and steal them, even though I thought about it. It would be funny if that was the spot as well too, if somebody snipes Guerrero. But we're kind of seeing a lot of the handcuff protections happening right now. So let's see. Looking at the Sadowski asked a good question. Does RotoWire have the draft kit, NFL DFS in a package for the season? I don't want to answer wrong, Sadowski, so I guess I'll go with I'm pretty sure if you buy a month subscription to RotoWire, that will at least have you covered with all the draft tools. And if you buy the package that says like all of them or all custom sports, whatever, that does come with the DFS stuff. I don't want you to commit to buying it longer for like 2 or 3 months if I'm wrong in that, but there are DFS tools that are used throughout the preseason. In fact, that's actually some of our best tools are DFS preseason, not because we're not good in the regular season, not at all. We're just one of the best at updating the information that happens in the preseason and updating the projections. All of our other competitors, it seems like that's lacking, and maybe rightfully so. You don't want to necessarily let people know that you need to dive into the preseason level DFS, but we do a really, really good job keeping up to date with that stuff as well too. So I believe, Sadowski, that does come with a RotoWire subscription if you buy the custom package part of things. Again, YouTube 15 gets you 15% off that RotoWire subscription as well too. You can use the draft assistant tool I talked about. You have the mock draft tools at your disposal. You can use it on the app, the RotoWire Fantasy Football app, anywhere, please. Please, if you do nothing else, nearly 800 people watching right now, if you do nothing else, please just download the RotoWire Fantasy Football app. If you can leave a nice review, if you could say, Joe sent me, he's annoying me to the no end, so I have to go ahead and leave a positive review, please do that. That would be perfect as well for the RotoWire Fantasy Football app. But the mock draft and draft assistant tool are also available on our software and on our website as well too. And you can also download your leagues that you're participating in. So My Fantasy League, ESPN, Yahoo, I think there's a few more, but if you're in a league, you already have your results, you can have that implemented on our software or on the website itself. And it will also do the draft assistant live for you. You can live sync the drafts going on at the moment too. So it's a really, really cool thing that RotoWire has been doing. We're really trying to update, modernize, but really just help you guys out with the best tools to have you make confident decisions during, I think, one of the more difficult times of the year, which is during draft season. It's fun. It's certainly fun. And if you've listened to me already for an hour, you can understand I've been rambling plenty and have lots of different fantasy thoughts, but having it in a digestible way is absolutely huge. And I think the RotoWire Fantasy Football app and also on the website itself on RotoWire does a great job. So thanks, Sadowski, for asking about that. And hopefully I answered it correctly. Again, if I'm wrong, get angry at me on Twitter. I'll be happy to kind of figure out things for you, but I believe it does come as part of it too. So we are through round 12, which is pretty crazy to say. It feels like we've only been doing this draft for like 10 minutes. You have Colston Loveland go off the board, and I was waiting for this. So Kyle Pitts, let's just count the tight ends right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I think it was Hawkinson was tight end 7. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, tight end 16 in that range. Somebody in the chat, and I think it was iStream Madden. I'll go back and find it. Will the Pitts hype finally be fulfilled, or are we going to be fooled again? It is the siren song of fantasy football as Kyle Pitts, and it feels like that's the way every single year, especially with this Darnell Mooney injury. To what degree, we don't know if Darnell Mooney will return or when he'll return. If there were ever a time for Kyle Pitts to go back to that rookie year where we got 1,000 receiving yards, which was, I think it's been done by tight ends, but very, very rarely ever. That was a really good fantasy season his rookie year. If we were ever to have that happen again, it is this year. And if it's not, well, I think the contract is out first and foremost. But if it's not, the Falcons can just move on. And I'm sure he'll be a reclamation project for somebody else. I keep saying the Chiefs. I'd love to have Kyle Pitts be with the Chiefs. And it's one of the reasons why I won't get rid of any of my dynasty assets still of Kyle Pitts, because that possibility is too lucrative. Michael Penix seems like he's more comfortable making some of these passes. If you're using Kyle Pitts the right way, it's down the seam, down the middle of the field, running deep, taking advantage of the size and speed combo that he has. And I think it's fair to say that Kirk Cousins, Desmond Ridder, they couldn't do that Michael Penix absolutely can. Might cause some turnovers. There's maybe some work ethic concerns with Kyle Pitts, which is the part that I'm most worried about. But this theoretically should be the best spot for Kyle Pitts to be a fantasy factor. So as tight end 16 in full point PPR leagues in a redraft, I wouldn't take him as my tight end 1. In best ball, I'm all on board. I think he's probably my third most rostered best ball tight end right now. But I don't know if there's a guarantee, at least, that we'll have Kyle Pitts be that. This should be the year. This should be the opportunity for that. I would have loved for Jerome Ford to fall to me with that pick. Ends up not, which is very frustrating. That's one of the reasons why I'm fine taking Judkins, because I think Jerome Ford ends up being the guy that fills in the event that he does not end up playing for any duration of time. So now it really becomes a much more difficult proposition. Who would you take at running back or receiver? No reason to go quarterback yet in my mind. Receivers on the board: Rashid Shaheed, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen McMillan, Cedric Tillman. Running backs, it's like the Bashal Tootin, Rico Dowdle, Tyler Algier range of things. Let's see. We got 2 running backs. We got the 3, and then with Judkins 4. I think the way I'll go ahead and do this, I'll push up another guy that maybe gets drafted a little bit earlier than they should, which is Nick Chubb here. I don't know if we're going to see Joe Mixon at the start of the regular season. I think there's enough real life concerns about what that looks like. And if it's Nick Chubb or Najee Harris, or Nick Chubb certainly over Braylon Allen, Nick Chubb over Jalen Wright, like those are legitimately good spots to be from a backup running back perspective. So as my running back 5 right now, protect me in the event that Judkins doesn't end up playing, you could, wow, that's a disturbing Rico Dowdle picture. Here's this one eye that's zoomed in. I've never seen that before. That was very jarring as I'm just talking to myself on the screen here. The one eye of Rico Dowdle. I like Nick Chubb, and the idea would be, especially, here's Nick Chubb weeks 1 through 4, especially if Joe Mixon gets put on the pup list or whatever else, and then maybe Judkins comes back and plays later on. Like that's the perfect scenario. And I watched one of my colleagues do that at the tight end position with Travis Kelce and then Colston Loveland. That's a really good way to go ahead and kind of partner it and duo it. And I think if you think about the same terminology, that obviously Nick Chubb is not on the Browns anymore, but if I'm trying to protect my running back investment in Judkins in that instance and get a safety net, like I'm pretty good with that too. So again, might be a little bit higher than the ADP, but I think that's the right call with this. Charlene asked, didn't the Falcons sign DJ Chark? Yes, Chark is probably not going to make the roster, though. I think it's more so that they're going to have like 3. If he does, it's like a wide receiver 4 or 5, like the Chargers last year, and he didn't end up playing at all. So, yes, Chark I think, is on the active roster at the moment. I do not believe he'll be there at the start of the regular season. So, cruising through here, round 13. Looking at some of these other running backs right now, it's Bashal Tootin, it's Tyler Algier, Blake Corum, which is a little bit surprising. Corum is typically drafted higher in this format than you would see in a few other ones right now. And then with Roshan Johnson off the board, I would have loved Kyle Williams. Didn't necessarily anticipate he would go there, but this is super sharp room, so that makes sense to me. I think that the next of this tier, and there's actually a bunch of receivers, if they all end up coming back, that's fantastic. But we'll just link them right now. I will go ahead with 30 seconds here. I'm debating as to what would be the proper way to go ahead and do this if I really want things to work out. All right, we'll go ahead and take it. We'll go. This is I guess the Packer fan of me with Romeo Doubs. I really think that as a wide receiver 3 on this team at minimum, he is at the best position or the best spot to lead the Packers in touchdown reception this year. If he ends up being a 70 catch guy for 1,000 yards, wouldn't be shocked at all. Anything that we've seen with Doubs in terms of play has been due to other receivers or LaFleur using scheme stuff with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson. I don't know why I did Watsonson. Jaden Reed or Christian Watson. And even if Matthew Golden just replaces Christian Watson in that same sort of way offensively, Doubs is always Jordan Love's preferred third down target, and Doubs is also Jordan Love's favorite red zone target. I think Romeo Doubs is one of those that I'll keep drafting, especially at cost right now, everywhere, because it doesn't hurt you. Like, again, Khalil Shakir, Christian Kirk, Romeo Doubs, this is my wide receiver 6, and I can still be protected in the instance that Doubs gets concussed, or maybe there's something else that goes on and isn't able to play a couple weeks. Like, this is one of the best spots to be, I think, for the Packers offense, is to draft Romeo Doubs at his cost over Matthew Golden or Jaden Reed, which go 3, 4, 5 rounds earlier. So I'm going to pull up the board. I'm going to take a drink real quick and kind of look over what else. 'Cause I've talked a lot about other circumstances, not a lot of teams, which is normally what is my favorite thing to do with these. So I'll look at it in just a second here. All right, again, midway through round 13, I got the board pulled up right now. I am Team 9, so I took Genty, St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, James Cook. Did not get Ray Davis to protect myself. Got Caleb Johnson, though, Judkins, Nick Chubb. I think that's a good running back 5, at least now, 5 some of that group, and maybe I'll get at least one more in the 2020 round NFFC draft. Looking at a few of these other teams, I always get interested in the stacks because the NFFC does a really good job of doing that. We had saw that Jake Ferguson, Dak Prescott stacked for Team 10. CeeDee Lamb was the 3rd overall pick, so he ended up not getting to be a relevant enough stack. You see quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud. There isn't any Nico Collins connection with that. I know A.J. Brown goes with the Jalen Hurts part of things, but no Dallas Goedert, which would be another one. Devonta Smith can often fall there, so not like a complete commitment to that. I think if I'm like going over which teams, I liked Team 1. Again, Jamar Chase, but DK Metcalf as a wide receiver 2 and Waddle's a 3 is great. But more importantly, Juwan Jennings as wide receiver 4, if he's healthy, is awesome. Would have loved the running backs to be a little bit different. So like instead of James Conner or Aaron Jones, I think I would have rather won RJ Harvey instead. And if I could have gotten Trey Benson coming back, that would have been a lot better. There goes JJ McCarthy, who I was wondering would fall a bit further for my Viking stack. It's fine. There really shouldn't be a scenario where I'm playing McCarthy over Jaden Daniels anyway. Like if that occurs, I'm in deep doo-doo. So I'm not terribly sweating that circumstance. Like it would have been nice, and certainly in best ball, it would have been something I'd prioritize more, but I don't really care. The Team 2 tight end combo is really interesting because I do get worried Ben Johnson's offense is going to be, well, Ben Johnson in Chicago, so the Lions offense now. I have reservations that the Lions will operate exactly the same way. And even if they wanted to do what they did in the first half of the season, which was run heavily with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm not certain that that's going to be a productive one for Sam Laporta. But if you think you're catching the good weeks between Sam Laporta and Colston Loveland, that's a really good spot to be in. That you're kind of just being able to not second guess, but get the optimal lineup situations for both those dudes. I feel really good about that. Justin Fields, boy, what quarterback is that? That's a great one here. So Fields is something like quarterback 15 or 16 is a massive fall. Normally you see Fields goes like quarterback 10 or 11. Love the DeAndre Thornton selection. That's a good one as well too. But that's a pretty good value. And especially if you have Josh Allen, you'd say, oh, well, I'm going to go ahead and take Josh Allen for the most part anyway. He's going to be playing most of my lineup. Maybe Fields is one of those that you take Fields and you're protecting other people from getting a top 3 or 4 quarterback upside. So that's a good call. Team 1 really kind of doing a lot of good things. I don't like the Kincaid-Kyle Pitts combo necessarily. Now, again, answering I Stream Man's question with Kyle Pitts, this should be the year. And between Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts, you probably have 2 tight ends you can say, well, this should be the year that they're going to do well. Just got to see it. I just want to see it a little bit before we go ahead and commit to that. So Team 3 really going crazy at receiver right now with 7 of them. I would imagine we'll see a little bit more of it. The second, I'd say probably the 4th tier of tight ends often running right now. And with my selection coming up, a few of the guys that I actually liked are still on the board. So I'm going to be kind of interested to see if I can get that to fall the way I wanted to. And again, with I think the idea in a full point PPR league would be to chase a bit more of these receivers. So that's what I'm going and looking at right now with 2 picks yet to go. Not super interested in the running backs that are left. It's like Justice Hill, Kareem Hunt, Marshawn Lloyd. There's a few that I like in this range, and they're all kind of like you can just sort of commit to a certain level and say, yeah, this guy can do that. I did have Keenan Allen as one of my selections, so that'll make things even easier. The guy I was trying to decide between Keenan Allen and Romeo Doubs, and then I was trying to decide between Romeo Doubs and Adam Thielen. Thielen, absolute call too. This is going to be the all boring team, all boring team of receivers between Romeo Doubs, Christian Kirk, Adam Thielen, even Khalil Shakir. But I am going to get a combo that I think I can start each and every week, and it has a lot of upside too. So I don't know what to buy with Tet McMillan and then Xavier Legette, and there's still Jalen Coker. Thielen shouldn't be producing still at this point in his career, and he keeps doing it. And for different teams and worse situations, arguably with the Panthers, Thielen has been one of the most productive slot receivers over the past 2 or 3 years when healthy. And I would argue that if you are the Panthers, you want to keep making Adam Thielen not be a thing, but you want Adam Thielen in the offense over Jalen Coker because you want Bryce Young to be a thing. You want to make sure that Bryce Young is one of those assets you're still developing and building around. I think you do that with Adam Thielen as your quarterback. So I'm very happy getting him as my wide receiver, 7 at this point. And even if it means forfeiting some depth at running back, and if Judkins doesn't end up playing, we're going to be kind of chasing things a little bit. I'm okay with that. I'm certainly okay. We saw one of the first defenses go off the board. I would imagine the first kicker is coming as well, too. Trevor Lawrence. When Trevor Lawrence goes, it's normally the signal that I need to take a backup quarterback again with Jaden Daniels. I don't necessarily think that's something I have to go ahead and push. But with everyone else kind of doing that, I think there's a bit of a reservation for me that I don't want to be left out, without getting at least one of these these quarterback twos. I think there's only 3 or 4 of the teams that don't have a quarterback, and I want to make sure that I at least get one of my preferred guys. So that's what I'll do coming back. Pat Bryant's a good selection that I buried a bit in the queue. Don't mind that one. Not over Thielen, but I can understand why somebody would choose to go that sort of route. So love that call. Jarquez Hunter was also in my queue among the running backs, if that was. And then there was Jordan Love, who I definitely that was going to be the guy I'd go ahead and take. But the good news is when you're left with these quarterbacks, it's Jordan Love, it's Justin Herbert, who I'll take here, and then Michael Penix. That is the teardrop afterwards. Maybe you want to throw 2 in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, but I will be very happy to get Justin Herbert. I think is quarterback 20, 19. Somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong with that. So I'll scroll up real quick. I know that we're kind of going to get to the point of the board where you can't quite see it, but there you go, Justin Herbert, my selection there. Really, really happy to have any one of Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert as one of my quarterback twos. Even if I think Jaden Daniels is going to be my starting lineup every single year, I think Justin Herbert has quarterback 1 upside in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. He certainly does, and has the mobility aspect too, that he's going to give you a good 300 yards on the ground when healthy, when he's not dealing with rib injury stuff. So Herbert, totally fine, and I think that's going to be really interesting to watch the Kyler Murray team and the Jared Goff and Caleb Williams team kind of I was going to say rectify, to deal with what is going to be a bit of, I would assume, at least a sprint to see which one of these quarterbacks you're going to end up getting. So loving the live audience chiming in here, guys. Thanks. Any of the questions you have, again, nearly 900 people watching now, which is awesome. Did not expect that here for a Sunday night. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, whether it's on Twitter or the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube page or anything else. It's been awesome to see you guys kind of participating along in the chat, trying to get to as many of the questions as we can too, and also talking about these drafts a little bit. So the run at tight end is one that I'm very nervous about because there's a few guys that I like a lot at this back end range. If I'm protecting TJ Hawkinson, we got to find somebody. There's one in particular I desperately want, and I don't want to leave this draft unless I get it. So getting closer to that sort of level. But we had talked about Deontay Thornton a little bit. I think that's a really good call for a team that's kind of chasing a little bit more of the receiver production, or at least wants some confidence that they're getting a breakout player. I have no idea what Thornton's going to be for the Raiders offense. I would assume it's going to be Brock Bowers and Myers as the inside slot targets for Geno Smith. And then whatever degree that you're using a downfield threat, it's just Marquez Valdes-Scantling if he could actually catch. And I think I had a friend that said that, and I would agree with that assessment. Does that work with the Raiders offense? Does that work in a division that has a bunch of really good coaches that should theoretically not have that as a possibility? I don't know. But I'm very intrigued by a 6'5" guy that runs a 4.3, whatever it is. And I think Thornton is one of those guys that if I can draft everywhere, I would choose to do so with one of my last round best ball picks. I'll be doing a DraftKings best ball live tomorrow. Very excited to go ahead and do that one as well, too. This was the kickoff of 4 live drafts in 4 days. 3 of which will be at least streamed or talked about. So obviously this one today on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Again, we'll have the DraftKings Best Ball both on my social media, JB Fantasy Sports. That'll be midday tomorrow. I'll try to give like a bit of a notice for you guys, the listeners. Again, nearly 1,000 of you watching right now. Awesome. Appreciate it. That's part of the millionaire or multi-million dollar competition, whatever that one is. And then we'll have the experts draft for Sirius XM, one of I think 3 that are happening throughout the kickoff or lead up to fantasy season. So I'll have that one Tuesday. I think it's a 14-team league, full point PPR. There's gonna be another one on the Sirius XM channel for Superflex, and I think another one for like a standard 12-team one as well too. So lots more for me from a live draft perspective coming up, either on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel here, on my social media, on the RotoWire social media. Lots and lots of stuff yet to go. So really, really It's going to be busy. it's it's going to be a really busy next couple days. And then I'll be at the Fantasy Expo. So I'm not sure, again, nearly 1,000 of you watching right now. Again, appreciate it. If you're going to be at the Fantasy Expo in Canton, Ohio this weekend, please hit me up. I'd love to talk to you guys, get to meet you. If nothing else, talk strategy. You guys know how much I love talking overall draft strategy as well, too. It's one of my favorite things. So I'll be at the Fantasy Expo in Canton, Ohio. I think we'll get there Thursday, we being a lot of the RotoWire contingency, and then I'll have a live shows on SiriusXM both Saturday and Sunday, talking about the drafts, the Kings Classic. My guy Jim Coventry doing his Kings Classic draft, will be able to live auction that draft and also announce it. Can't wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun for SiriusXM Channel 87, but also more live shows recapping the drafts and the expo itself on Sunday too. So crazy busy week. Super excited for it. Very surprised to see Bryce Young go over Michael Penix. I don't need a quarterback 2 anymore, so I'm wondering one that is going to end up happening. Maybe it ends up being this Stroud or May group or Kyler Murray. We're seeing all the team defenses go off the board. I'll be honest right now, I'm just going to take one last round like I always do. Maybe I take a kicker a little bit earlier, maybe, but definitely didn't really want any of these runs of the kicker and defenses just yet. There's actually a lot of meat in the bone, at least in my mind, of draftable players that I don't want to forfeit or miss. So getting closer to my pick 9 here, we'll make that selection, and then we'll go over a few more of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat. iStream Man's doing an awesome job just chiming in. Appreciate you. If you guys are also into Madden, as I would assume iStream Madden is, Madden launch is also going to be coming August 7th, which is normally a holiday that I would literally take off of work for. Can't, because I'll be at the Fantasy Expo, but I can't wait to dive into that. Been loving college football as well too. I talk less about that than I maybe need to, or I talk more about that maybe I need to on my social media channels. But been loving the games right now and looking forward to the Madden release coming out here soon. So nearing my selection, want to make sure that I'm at least kind of prepared for it here with 3 to go. There's still 2 guys that were on my queue as well left. It's been a run of running backs, which has been disappointing. Would have liked to have a few more of these guys maybe available. I think I'm okay though. I'm not necessarily sweating what is left on the board. And I think if there is one position that you can fill from a waiver wire perspective, okay, well that whoever teammate deliberately just took Mason Taylor in front of me. That was an obvious snipe. I have been in on Mason Taylor as much as I possibly can for this year, and ends up going way before the queue. He's at least 3 or 4 tight ends buried. That was a direct. I know who Joe Bartel is, and I'm taking him instead of it, which I love. This is how I know I've made it in the world when people are deliberately sniping me on my favorite guys in round 16. So Mason Taylor, the guy that I want everywhere, I won't be able to get him here in the most important draft of what I probably at least financially will be doing. So we're going to go ahead and just clean up on a few of these rookie running backs then while we're waiting around a little bit. We'll get Taj Brooks, who I had the conversation with Mario Puig on Friday about. I'm not certain he's not the backup running back to Chase Brown, and I'm not certain that they're not going to use Chase Brown and Taj Brooks together. Now, this is a day 3 selection, round 6 pick. You would assume Taj Brooks isn't going to be guaranteed, but a day 3 pick in this year's running back class, I think you need to start, the listeners, need to start converting it more to that's like a round 4 or 5 guy in years past, especially last year's class, which had some awful running backs get taken way higher. It's because there weren't many good running backs overall. I do think this running back class, with how deep it was, you get to see like guys like Devin Neal or Taj Brooks or Ollie Gordon, who's still on the board right now for us, but also a round 7 selection. That happens because teams can wait so long. It isn't that, the team has decided this player's not good. No, it's because you can get some really, really good running backs a little bit later in drafts and can prioritize things a different way. So I think it's a really good idea in even a 16 team league to get something like 1 or 2 of Jarquez Hunter, Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal. There's probably 4 or 5 rookie running backs that if you don't get at least 2 of them in your 16 team draft, you're doing something wrong. Like that's the way I would look at things. So I would be recommending to everyone to make sure you go ahead and do that. Like, just load up on some of these rookie running backs again early with the hope that it's going to end up playing out for you in a certain spot. So we took Christian Kirk with the idea that like there's going to be a backup receiver, we should say, that will like, and I'll go ahead and take Jalen Noel in the event that Christian Kirk gets injured. Jalen Noel is going to be one of those that I think steps in right away and benefits that same way. I don't know if Jalen Noel is on my team by like week 2 or week 3. I also took Bucky Irving last year with, I think, my round 19 selection and cut him pre-week 1. And then, of course, we all know what happened from there. Bucky Irving goes insane as one of the better fantasy seasons. So I don't want to do that same thing. But if there was a first cut needed, it's probably Jalen Noel for me. And technically, with just one more pick to go before the kickers and defenses, there's a variety of ways we could go with this. I look like I'm absent tight end, and I was anticipating that I would get Mason Taylor as kind of my pocket play at the end. Of course, teammate, clearly a fan of Joe Bartel, ends up taking Mason Taylor one pick before me in the snipe, which I absolutely love. But we'll have to kind of adjust accordingly as to what that will end up looking like as we go through. But this has been awesome. Loving you guys chiming in. I want to at least answer one more question. Let's go ahead and get to... Do you think James Conner becomes the goal line back stealing touchdowns from Trey Benson? Well, the way that James Conner has been used the past couple of years at the Cardinals has been the main focal running back. Everything we have heard this offseason, we heard it from James Conner, we heard it from Trey Benson, we heard both of them say together just this week, is that the Cardinals will be using Trey Benson and James Conner in conjunction with one another. And I don't know if that's in a way to help protect James Conner. I don't know if that actually ends up happening at the start of the regular season, if the team is frustrated with the way that Trey Benson's been playing and just wants more reliable plays from James Conner. But Conner has been injured, I think, 6 of his 8 years of his NFL, or 5 of his 8 years, last year being the only healthy seasons he's had of recent memory. And I do think of the rookie running backs last year, I loved Blake Corum. I still like Blake Corum a lot, but I really like Trey Benson. And there's a lot of talk around the league about Trey Benson being one of those guys that look out, he could be an explosive candidate. So in my mind, I still assume the Cardinals will use James Conner as the alpha, as the number 1, and then Trey Benson comes in as like the change of pace, Justin Jackson, Austin Eckler kind of backfield for the Chargers. When Conner gets injured, because it almost seems like it's always a when to this, then Trey Benson becomes a top 12 fantasy running back. And that's why you draft Trey Benson ahead of round 12 or round 11, wherever his ADP is right now, because I think he has more potential and more likely opportunity than a lot of the other running backs in that range. So it isn't, in my mind, James Conner and Trey Benson working together, one stealing the role. It's James Conner, despite what they're saying, James Conner being the guy and then Trey Benson being the backup. But we know that James Conner gets injured plenty. And in that scenario, you're going to have Trey Benson be one of the best running backs, I think, in fantasy forever, week or month or however long it ends up being for James Conner that he's out. So love that question as well, too. Again, 3 more rounds. I'll probably end up signing off here with the live stream, or at least ending it pretty close when we're getting that kicker defense range for me again, which will be my last two picks or more or less. There's probably strategy in taking the kickers and defenses. Maybe I should look at that a little bit. But I have not a whole lot of interest in like figuring out what that looks like here at the beginning of August. I think it's like, okay, what does it really matter? And that's the one critique if I have of the NFFC, that they're still using kickers and defense overall, which has been a joke that I have with Greg and the guys plenty. Like, why are we doing this still? Well, but let's see. So counting through the running backs I have, because that will be a thing I probably end up chasing. We have 2. We have the Judkins part. Who knows if he ends up playing at all? We have Nick Chubb, and then we have one of the dart throws in Taj Brooks. I have a receiver who I like. He might have just went, which is perfect. I don't even talk myself into this. Diami Brown ended up going to the back end of the round 17, which is perfect. I don't need to go ahead and do that, because if Diami Brown was still on the board, I would have had to talk myself and just like, maybe go with another running back or another receiver. But that does not seem to be the case here. So thankfully, we don't need to go down direction. There's a few running backs that I don't mind that are left. It is a bleak backfield, though, of remaining players at least. I could commit to the Bengals backfield, get Samaje Perine, and just know that I have whatever is the backup running back. But I'll have 2 set in the queue. We'll go ahead and make these 2 picks, or this 1 pick at least, and kind of go from there. Oh yeah, I guess with me up. So Sean Tucker, I like that selection a lot, but I don't know what to make of Ollie Gordon. I have no idea if the Dolphins will even keep him on the active roster. He could be cut at a certain point. Understand all that could certainly happen. But I think if we are going to have a power running back in the Dolphins backfield, it's not Jalen Wright, it's not Devon Achane. So Ollie Gordon, who was 2 years ago the dynasty running back, could just default into that role, and whatever carries he ends up getting from that matter. I don't know what to think. And again, this is literally my last pick, again, with kicker and defense coming up, literally my last pick. But I don't mind the concept of getting involved in the Dolphins offense and in that way, especially with some of those guys injured. So we'll have to see. There's a few other running backs I like that are left. I partly want to do the just don't draft anybody, a kicker or defense, and just pick up one on the waiver wire. I don't think we're allowed to do that, or I'm not sure we should do that. So we'll go through some of the schedule stuff right now. Week 1 schedule is going to be a Google for me at the moment, and see who's something that we should be considering from a defense perspective with one of these last picks coming up. Michael Penix, can't believe he's finally going off the board as one of the last real life player selections. That is crazy to me. That is absolutely crazy to me. Oh, okay. I'm pretty happy that, I know this is, okay, I was going to say, this is clearly not the right schedule. This is the 2020, last year's NFL schedule. Let's just go ahead and make a kicker selection, because that's probably the better part of this. And yeah, we'll take the number 1 kicker from last year in Chris Boswell. I'm very, very comfortable going that direction. Again, one of the last picks. How did that? I typed in week 1 regular season 2025, and it pulled up the Niners and the Jets. And I'm like, there's no way that ends up happening again, right? Like, we can't assume that that's going to occur again. Yeah, don't understand how ESPN have that so wrong. So looking, is that real? Is that really who the defense is starting? I'm looking at the week 1 schedule for this year. It would be the Niners against the Colts. Well, that's a slam dunk, Niners. Why isn't the Niners one of the top drafted defenses? Did I just mess up? Did I mess up here in round 19? I didn't take the Niners defense over Chris Boswell. This could be catastrophic. I could have made a grave error. Like missing out on the Daniel Jones touchdowns or whatever else. Like that's got to be right. No, this is not right either, because the Packers play the Lions. Who has the actual week 1 NFL schedule? How is this so hard to find? This is incredible. Oh my God. I cannot get the correct week 1 NFL schedule. Oh, I can't believe this. How did that even happen where it's the Niners? Okay, whatever. That's fine. Okay. Going through this one more time. Niners against the Seahawks. I actually still don't mind that one, but it's certainly not as good as the Colts, which is what I was looking like. This is crazy. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Robert. That's what I'm saying. How is this not determined out there? Like, oh, yeah, thank you. San Francisco at Seattle. That's exactly it. Henry popping in too. Thank you, Henry, as well. I'm going crazy that I could not find the correct schedule on this. I can't believe that that's actually multiple. I just literally Googled 2025 week 1 NFL schedule, and there are 2 different places that don't have the correct thing. Somebody is failing at their job. Like, this is not a correct way of doing things if I can't find it in 2 different places. And yes, I know Robert or Henry, one of you is saying that's just because Joe's dumb. You are correct. I understand how that works. Even still, I don't know how we're not going ahead and seeing some of these. Like this, the schedule's updated. This is ridiculous. I didn't know about the Colts and Dolphins one. Yeah, that's one of those that gets targeted often as well too. Jay Wimmers talks about the 14 NFFCs. Probably 10 of them are live streamed. Love that. I don't know. Maybe did I miss Jay? Were you in this one as well too? Is that yeah? Live it, learn from it, love it. Yeah, maybe that's one of those as well too. But obviously, it's been a lot of fun getting to do this again. Over 1,000 people watching now live. This has been happening again. Thank you. If nothing else, please make sure you download the RotoWire Fantasy Football app anywhere in the App Store, either one of them. And if you leave a 5-star review, just saying Joe told me to, you will earn a high five from me, virtually or otherwise. I really appreciate you guys going and do that. YouTube 15 gets you 15% off the RotoWire subscription side of things too. If you could tell somebody listening as well that when you're subscribing, Joe sent me, perfect. Just say that Joe was so annoying that we had to go ahead and get a subscription. That is music to my ears. And while I might get chastised at work, it's a good thing for everyone else if that ends up happening. So YouTube 15% off the RotoWire subscription as well too. So yes, that's right. Yeah. Henry said, the NFFC had said earlier, and I actually did ask Greg about this the other day. They will never get rid of kickers and defenses because they're snobs. That's exactly what it is. That they like to be all pretentious and say, "Oh, we're better than the fantasy community out there. We are the most high, most expert level, got the most money going on. We must keep kicker and defense." So no, there's probably a reason that Greg and company are doing that, other than to be annoying. Maybe it is a little bit snobby, but yeah, I did remember seeing that as well too. So Yes, the NFFC did go ahead and see that as well too. Henry watching, Jay watching live. I appreciate you guys do that again. I stream Madden helping out. Robert helping me out with all the schedule stuff too. Rounding out here at the end of the draft as well. But really appreciate you guys popping on too. I love kicker and defense strategy myself. You might be the only person, Henry. So kudos to you for being that much of a degenerate that you are into the kicker and defense strategy. As you can tell, I put a lot of thought into it for mine. No, we'll kind of have to go ahead and see how that ends up looking out. But been having a good time. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, all right. So if you have Brandon Aubrey in your leagues, you would have been correct. I was getting a lot of, oh, shoot, who's the Lions kicker that I'm blanking on right now? Jake Bates. The way I love Mason Taylor this year is the amount that I love Jake Bates as well. And of course, Brandon Aubrey ends up being the crazy fantasy guy too. So you can have your Brandon Aubrey. I have the Chris Boswell. Aaron Rodgers will certainly get them in field goal range once again. If whatever the quarterback combo of last year for Pittsburgh did it, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers, my guy in the football field, to be clear, can go ahead and do that as well too. Oh, brutal! I'm watching Henry talk about this now. If he would have done a little bit better, $75,000 because of the kicker. Oh, I don't even want this. That makes me sick to see, Henry. I hopefully you can have that happen again this year, and your kicker does not hurt you to that level. That's crazy. Oh, that is like the worst thing to be in. Awful. I feel very bad. Hopefully things change around. Oh, I mean, like still being in a good spot to that degree is awesome. Where you can for this year. So I want to make sure I get my defense pick in and like don't completely flub this, but might be too far gone now at this point. Yeah, look at the Seahawks Niners part of things. I like the Packers defense a lot, and that might be one of those that I'll take in most weeks, but they have a pretty difficult schedule, and certainly week 1 against the Lions isn't one of those that I necessarily want to target as well. Only a few left, like Chargers would be another good defense there against the Chiefs. Cowboys would be one that I have zero interest in going after, but Eagles even especially. Seahawks, we talked about the Jets as well too. Jets against the Steelers. Maybe that is the answer. Bears over Vikings isn't one that I mind. Bears and Vikings as well too. I don't mind that one. That might be the direction that we end up going with this. Jets or Bears is really where this comes down to. And again, I'll just kind of rotate these as we move on. Or Buccaneers in the first week against Michael Penix and company. Theoretically, they're healthy as well too. Or I guess I thought I saw the Commanders. Oh, we'll just do this, right? Commanders against the Giants. That would be. I'm not being. Yeah, okay. This is easy call. We'll just play the Commanders. Not convinced Russell Wilson and company will be all that good, and also theoretically an improved defense can have the turnover potential. So, Commanders defense is the way we end up going with this one too. Arizona against the Saints. That would have been another one as well too. At 60-yarder off the upright. Oh my God. Henry, I mean, I don't know you other than I feel incredibly bad for you. And my heart goes out to you and not Brandon Aubrey. I don't want to swear on the YouTube channel side of things, but there's some words that I would at least say in support of you too. So you mentioned, cut a new defense for Saturday totally get that. So I'll answer one question before we sign off here. Tim asks, they have Gibbs and it was offered Genty plus Neighbors, 10-team redraft with the Superflex. Literally, what are you doing, Tim? This needs the fastest smash that you've ever done in your life. We're not going to make any other jokes besides that. Literally click this as fast as you can. Take Genty and Neighbors every single time. I love Gibbs, and I have reservations about Genty. And I would still do this 100% out of 100. You could literally flip Neighbors for basically Gibbs again if you're going off of the computer assets right now, or if you're going keep, trade, cut. That is the easiest Dynasty-related question I've ever had in my life. Tim, thank you for giving me a layup to end the show. Again, nearly 1,000 people watching live along today, whether it be on my social media, RotoWire social media as well, to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel as well. Love this. Love that we got this last question. And reminder, you can run through these scenarios of the draft on the RotoWire mock draft tool on the RotoWire Fantasy Football app. You have the draft assistant as well. YouTube 15 gets you 15% off the subscription. If you do nothing else today, just leave a 5-star review on the app. Understandably, people are upset with the pricing changes. I get that, but this is a really, really great tool that'll help you practice and do a lot of different exercises in 12-team leagues, in 10-team leagues, and super flexes. Using that mock draft tool for free is going to be one of the ways I think you guys get to be really good doing drafts this year. So appreciate everyone following along today. Over an hour and a half of me literally talking straight. I will have 3 other live drafts coming up on my Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports. Tomorrow I'll be doing the live Monday night, the live DraftKings Best Ball as well too. So appreciate everyone tagging along, watching today, and best of luck to everyone in their lineups.